For years, Earth had been quiet, too quiet. The once bustling cities, full of life, had turned into ghost towns. The booming sound of industry and the voices of humanity had faded into an eerie silence. A silence that seemed to echo across the world, stretching from the ruined skyscrapers to the forests that once teemed with wildlife. The Great War that had decimated humanity had left the planet scarred, its surface a broken shell of what it used to be. Earth's most powerful forces, once proud and full of hope, were now nothing more than memories. The enemy fleets that had attacked Earth years ago assumed victory, confident that there was nothing left to challenge them. They moved on, taking their conquest of the galaxy for granted, while Earth lay dormant, seemingly abandoned by the rest of the universe. There were survivors, of course, scattered across the planet, hiding in the shadows. A few pockets of humanity still clung to existence in the hidden corners of Earth, living in the crumbled remnants of the world they had once known. They had no communication with the outside galaxy, no way to send word of their survival. They were alone. For years, no one from the stars had come to help, and no one had even tried to contact them. They had become nothing more than a forgotten memory. The powerful fleets that had once attacked Earth had long since moved on, leaving Earth as nothing more than a lost world. And yet, the survivors still held on to one fragile hope, that one day, somehow, someone would come. But as time passed, that hope started to fade. The few who were still alive began to wonder if anyone would ever remember Earth. The warships that had fought on Earth's soil had disappeared into the void, and all that remained were the broken cities and shattered landscapes. Even the remnants of the human race were dwindling, struggling to survive in the harsh conditions of the planet. It seemed as though Earth had become nothing more than a memory, an afterthought in the grand scheme of the galaxy. Little did they know, deep beneath the surface of the world, something was stirring. The silence wasn't the result of defeat. No, it was something far more powerful. Earth wasn't just waiting to be forgotten. It was waiting to awaken. For beneath the desolate surface, in hidden bunkers and buried deep within the Earth's crust, humanity had hidden something far greater than anyone had expected. The war that had nearly wiped out the planet hadn't truly extinguished the light of humanity. Instead, it had sparked something entirely new. The survivors who lived in the shadows, in forgotten cities and crumbling outposts, had no idea what lay beneath their feet. They couldn't have known that buried in these secret places were the remnants of Earth's greatest power, a power that had been hidden for safety, waiting for the right moment to emerge. The galaxy thought humanity was gone, but Earth was far from dead. And while the world above had grown quiet, something deep below had been quietly preparing for the return of its lost civilization. The galaxy had moved on, thinking Earth was nothing more than a broken world, a tragic memory of what once was. But Earth wasn't just waiting to die. It was waiting to fight again, to rise from the ashes. The survivors had no idea what would happen next. They had long given up hope of ever seeing the stars again, let alone any kind of help from outside forces. But deep in the forgotten parts of Earth, a spark of life was beginning to grow. It was the last hope of humanity, lying dormant, yet ready to awaken at the right moment. And then, one day, the silence was broken. The very stillness that had hung over Earth for so long was shattered in an instant. No one expected it, not the survivors, and certainly not the galaxy. The quiet, abandoned world was no longer a forgotten relic. Something powerful was happening. Something was coming. The question was not whether Earth had been abandoned, but whether the galaxy was ready for what was about to rise from its ashes. The last traces of Earth's greatest secrets had been hidden for years, quietly growing in the shadows. Now, they were ready to emerge. The silence that had held the planet in its grasp was no longer a sign of defeat. It was a sign of something much bigger, something that was about to shake the very foundation of the galaxy itself. Earth's story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And the galaxy had no idea what was about to happen next. For years, Earth lay in silence, an eerie stillness that no one had ever imagined. The great cities that once thrived with life and energy were now nothing more than hollow structures, standing like forgotten monuments to a lost era. Skyscrapers that once pierced the sky now stood broken, with shattered glass and cracked steel serving as grim reminders of the world's lost glory. The bustling streets, filled with the sound of chatter and traffic, had been replaced by a haunting quiet that echoed through the empty spaces. Even the once vibrant forests and fertile lands were now barren, scared by the ravages of war. Earth, it seemed, was a world that had been left behind, abandoned by both its enemies and its own people. The Great War that had torn apart humanity's cities and nearly wiped out its entire population had left a gaping wound on the planet. The enemy forces had come with such overwhelming strength that no one had believed Earth would survive. In the end, Earth's defenders fell, and the planet's last remaining survivors were forced into hiding, scattered across the ruined world. The fleet that had once fought for Earth's survival was destroyed, and all communication with the outside galaxy was severed. The universe moved on, believing humanity was gone for good. To the rest of the galaxy, Earth was just another forgotten corner of space, a world that had been lost in the chaos of war. The survivors, hiding in the ruins of their former civilization, had no choice but to live in silence. They had no way to communicate with the outside universe, no hope of rescue or assistance. They lived in the shadows of their once great cities, scavenging what little they could and trying to stay hidden from the enemies who still roamed the Earth's surface. Over time, they began to lose faith, not only in the possibility of rescue, but in the very idea that anyone still cared. The stars above seemed so distant, and the galaxy so vast, that Earth felt like an isolated speck in an uncaring universe. Slowly but surely, the survivors began to accept that Earth's fate had been sealed. But beneath the surface of this quiet, forgotten world, something was stirring. The silence that hung over Earth wasn't a sign of defeat. It was the calm before the storm. Deep within the planet, hidden beneath layers of rock and soil, the remnants of humanity's greatest weapon lay dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken. For years, the enemies that had destroyed Earth's defenses had believed their victory was absolute, that nothing could possibly rise from the ashes of this ruined world. But what they didn't know was that Earth's greatest strength had never been in its weapons or its technology. It had been in the spirit of its people, the unyielding will to survive and rebuild. The survivors knew nothing of what lay beneath their feet. They could only wonder if Earth was truly lost or if there was some small hope left, buried deep in the forgotten corners of their world. They had no idea that, far from being abandoned, Earth had quietly prepared for a comeback. The great secrets of humanity's past, the ones that had once powered its greatest achievements, had been hidden away in secret bunkers and underground cities. These were the last remnants of Earth's glory, kept safe from the prying eyes of invaders, waiting for the right moment to return. And that moment was coming. While the galaxy had forgotten Earth, the survivors below the surface had no idea that the most extraordinary event in the history of their world was about to unfold. The silence that had reigned for so long would soon be shattered by the sound of Earth's greatest weapon, a force that would change the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. In the dead of night, as the survivors slept in their darkened shelters, a distant hum began to reverberate through the ground. At first, it was barely noticeable, just a low vibration beneath the surface. But over time, it grew louder, a constant, steady beat that seemed to pulse with life. Something was awakening beneath the surface of the planet, and as the vibration grew stronger, the survivors began to feel a strange sense of anticipation, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The silence that had once seemed so final was now something else, something more hopeful. It was as if the planet was slowly beginning to stir, like a long-forgotten giant awakening from a deep slumber. And soon, the survivors would realize that Earth had not been abandoned. It had only been waiting for the right moment to strike back, waiting for the return of humanity's greatest armada. But the galaxy would not be prepared for what was about to happen next. The world had been silent for so long, and no one had expected it to change. But change was coming, and it came with a force that shook the very foundation of Earth. The hum beneath the planet's surface grew louder, more powerful, until it could no longer be ignored. The survivors, living in the forgotten corners of the Earth, felt something stirring, something immense, something that made their hearts race, and their minds wonder if they were dreaming. It began slowly at first, just a distant rumble in the sky. But then, without warning, a flash of light cut across the heavens. From the edges of space, beyond the distant stars, something appeared. A massive fleet, unlike anything seen before. It was not the fleet of Earth's enemies, the ones who had long believed humanity to be extinct. No, this was something entirely different. The ships that filled the sky were unmistakably human, their designs sharp and sleek, the symbols of Earth's long-forgotten strength emblazoned across their hulls. This was Earth's Armada, a force that had been hidden away for years, waiting for the moment when the planet would need it most. The sheer size of the fleet was breathtaking. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of ships, ranging from colossal battleships to nimble fighters, all moved in perfect unison, their engines roaring as they tore through the atmosphere. For the first time in years, the skies above Earth were filled with the unmistakable sound of powerful engines, a sound that had once been commonplace, but had since become a memory. The survivors, scattered across the world, looked up in awe and disbelief. Could it really be? Could this be the return of humanity's greatest force? The very Armada they had thought was lost forever. But the most incredible part wasn't the fleet itself. It was what it carried. The ships weren't just weapons of war. They were a symbol of Earth's resilience, a testament to the survival of humanity. The Armada wasn't simply a military force. It was a message to the galaxy and to the enemies who had destroyed their world, that Earth was not finished. Humanity wasn't gone. It had merely been waiting, quietly preparing for the moment when it would rise again. The question on everyone's mind was the same. Who was leading this mighty Armada? Who was the commander of this force that had returned from the forgotten depths of Earth's past? For years, the galaxy had assumed that all of Earth's leaders had perished, that no one had survived the brutal war that had nearly wiped out the planet. But now, as the Armada made its way toward Earth's surface, a new mystery emerged. Who had the power, the courage, and the knowledge to bring this fleet back to life? Was it a general from Earth's military past, or someone else entirely? A hero long thought lost to the pages of history. As the fleet descended into Earth's atmosphere, the survivors were filled with a strange mix of hope and fear. Hope, because they could see that the future of their world was not as bleak as they had once believed. Fear, because they knew that the galaxy would not take kindly to Earth's return. For years, they had been forgotten, left to live in the shadows of a broken world. But now, with Earth's greatest fleet in the sky, they could no longer remain hidden. The truth was that the galaxy was not ready for what was coming. Earth's enemies, the ones who had destroyed the planet, were not prepared for a force like this. They had believed Earth's time was over, that no one would rise to challenge them. But they had underestimated the spirit of humanity. The fleet that was now descending toward Earth's surface wasn't just a military force. It was a symbol of Earth's defiance, a message that said, "We are not gone, we are not weak, and we will never be forgotten." The Armada's arrival wasn't just about reclaiming Earth. It was about showing the galaxy that humanity's strength was far from extinguished. In the darkest corners of space, the enemy fleets had long since celebrated their victory. They had taken Earth for granted, assuming there was no one left to challenge them. But as Earth's Armada appeared in the sky, they were forced to confront the truth. Earth was still here. And it had come back with a vengeance. What the galaxy didn't realize, what no one had expected, was that the survivors of Earth had been quietly rebuilding for years, waiting for the right moment to strike. Now, that moment had arrived. The enemy fleets were about to learn the hard way that Earth was not a world to be taken lightly. They had thought humanity was gone, but in reality, Earth had been preparing for this very moment. a moment when humanity's greatest armada would return to reclaim its place in the stars. The battle for Earth was about to begin. The battle for Earth began with a shockwave of power that reverberated through the universe. The arrival of Earth's greatest armada had been nothing short of a revelation, and now the galaxy's enemies were finally realizing the true extent of the power they had underestimated. They had thought they had wiped out humanity, left Earth as nothing more than a forgotten relic. But the sight of Earth's fleet, hovering above the planet like a shadow of the past, sent a wave of panic through their ranks. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity was not just a people, but a force that refused to stay down. The enemy fleets, which had been comfortably spread across the galaxy, were caught off guard by the sudden resurgence of Earth's might. They had never expected the planet to come back from the brink of annihilation, let alone possess the power to challenge them. As Earth's ships powered up their weapon systems and prepared for combat, the invaders scrambled to respond. But it was too late. The Armada, perfectly coordinated and armed with advanced technology that had been kept secret for years, moved as one, swift and lethal. The skies above Earth erupted into chaos. The first volley of missiles launched from Earth's ships, cutting through the enemy ranks like a knife through butter. The precision of Earth's fleet was unmatched, as if they had been waiting for this moment their entire lives. The warships, massive in size and formidable in their firepower, tore through the enemy ships, their shields flickering with every impact. But the true surprise lay in the smaller, faster ships, sleek fighters that zipped through the sky like lightning, darting around the larger ships with incredible speed, striking from unexpected angles, and retreating before the enemy could even react. The galaxy's invaders were not prepared for this kind of warfare. They had anticipated an easy conquest, thinking that Earth's defenses had crumbled and its people had vanished. But they had underestimated Earth's resolve. The survivors had rebuilt, not just their cities, but their very ability to fight back. The Earth's armada wasn't just a remnant of a lost civilization. It was a rebirth, a powerful testament to the unyielding will of humanity. In the midst of the chaos, the leaders of Earth's armada remained focused, issuing commands with calm precision. They had been through this before, back when they had once led Earth's forces to victory. They knew the stakes, and they knew how to fight. Their ships moved with a rhythm and discipline that sent shockwaves through the enemy ranks. For every enemy fighter that was destroyed, 2 more Earth ships took their place. The enemy's formation began to falter, their tactics falling apart under the relentless onslaught of Earth's forces. The true power of Earth's fleet lay not just in its advanced technology or superior firepower. It was in the unity and determination of the people who had survived. The survivors, scattered across the planet for so long, had found each other and formed a bond that went beyond just survival. It was a bond forged in the crucible of war. They fought not for themselves, but for the future of their planet. Each ship, each weapon, each missile fired from Earth's fleet was a message to the galaxy. Earth was not gone. It was not weak. And it would never give up. But the battle wasn't just about revenge. It was about something far greater. As Earth's ships pummeled the enemy forces, a quiet realization spread across the survivors below. They were witnessing the rebirth of their world. The skies above, once filled with destruction and death, were now filled with hope. The same ships that had once fought for humanity's survival were now fighting for its future. This battle wasn't just about reclaiming Earth, it was about reclaiming the very soul of humanity. Meanwhile, the invaders, shocked by the intensity of Earth's counterattack, began to realize they had made a grave mistake. They had assumed that Earth was just another casualty of war, a planet that had been left behind and forgotten. But they had underestimated the strength of humanity's spirit. The fleets that had once looked down on Earth as an afterthought now found themselves on the defensive, struggling to keep up with Earth's relentless assault. The enemy commanders scrambled to regroup, but it was too late. Earth's armada had already gained the upper hand. With every enemy ship that fell, Earth's fleet grew stronger. The tide of the battle had turned, and there was no going back. The galaxy would never forget what had happened here. Earth was no longer a forgotten world. It was a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy's greatest invaders were about to learn it the hard way. In the final moments of the battle, as the last of the enemy fleet struggled to maintain its position, Earth's commanders gave the order. The final blow was coming. A massive energy pulse, the result of years of secret research and development, charged up from the heart of Earth's flagship. The pulse shot out like a beam of light, cutting through the enemy fleet like a hot knife through butter, wiping out the last remnants of their forces in an instant. As the dust settled, Earth's skies cleared. The battle was won. The survivors on the ground, who had watched in awe as their world was torn apart by war, now saw their sky filled with the ships of their own people, returning to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. For the first time in years, Earth was not just a broken, forgotten world. It was a symbol of hope, strength, and survival. But the question remained, would the galaxy accept Earth's return? Would Earth's enemies learn to respect the planet they had once underestimated? The battle was won, but the true war had only just begun. Earth had come back, and the universe would never be the same again. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. Earth had reclaimed its place in the galaxy, and its Armada had proven that humanity's strength had not been broken. The skies, once scared by invaders, were now filled with the gleaming ships of Earth's forces, standing as a symbol of the planet's resilience. But even as the last remnants of the enemy fleet were scattered across the void, a greater challenge loomed on the horizon. The galaxy had seen Earth's return, and it had taken notice. The survivors, still reeling from the shock of victory, now faced a new reality. Earth had awakened, but its resurgence was not without consequences. The powers that controlled the galaxy, those who had once written Earth off as a forgotten world, were not going to simply accept this challenge to their dominance. Earth's victory had sent shockwaves through the political and military structures of the galaxy. The galaxy's leaders, from the great councils to the distant warlords, now knew one thing for certain. Earth was no longer the forgotten, powerless world they had once thought it to be. Humanity had returned with a vengeance. As Earth's leaders gathered to discuss their next steps, the question remained, what now? They had won the battle, but what about the war? What about the future of humanity in a galaxy that had never been kind to them? The Armada was powerful, but it was still just a fraction of what was needed to secure Earth's place in the stars. The galaxy's most powerful forces had already begun to regroup, planning their next moves, and Earth's leadership knew they had no time to waste. A council was formed, made up of the surviving leaders, generals, and visionaries who had spent years in hiding, preparing for this very moment. They discussed not just the immediate aftermath of the battle, but the long-term future of humanity. The galaxy would not simply allow Earth to rise unchallenged, and it would take more than just military power to secure Earth's survival. Earth would need alliances, strategy, and most importantly, a voice in the larger galactic community. Humanity's return to the stars would not be easy. While Earth's Armada had defeated a significant force, it was clear that there were larger, more powerful entities in the galaxy that would not hesitate to crush Earth's resurgence. To survive, Earth would need to navigate a complex web of galactic politics, forging new alliances with species and factions that had either been neutral or hostile to Earth in the past. The key to their survival would be unity, not just within Earth's borders, but with those they could trust among the stars. In the midst of this, the survivors of Earth, those who had witnessed the rise of humanity's greatest armada and had fought for their planet's future, were left to wonder what role they would play in this new world. They had fought and survived in the ruins of their once great civilization, but now they faced the challenge of rebuilding not just their homes, but their place in the galactic order. Could Earth find peace and prosperity in a galaxy that had nearly wiped it out? Could humanity find a place among the stars without repeating the mistakes of the past? The answer to those questions would come slowly, but Earth was ready for the challenge. Earth's leaders, their fleets, and the survivors who had lived through the darkest days knew that the fight was far from over. As Earth's Armada patrolled the skies, securing the planet and its new territories, the survivors on the surface began to rebuild. The cities that had once been destroyed by war were now being reconstructed, not just as they were, but better, stronger, more resilient, and equipped with the knowledge that they would never again be caught off guard. Earth's newfound unity was tested as it forged its path forward. There would be battles ahead, political maneuvers, and hard choices. But one thing was certain: Earth was no longer a world of ashes and silence. It was a planet reborn, and its people would never again be silent or forgotten. The galaxy, however, was not ready for the changes that Earth's return would bring. The vast empires and alliances that had long ruled the stars were shaken to their core by the rise of a once-forgotten world. The power structures that had held the galaxy in their grip were now in jeopardy, and as Earth's fleet patrolled its newly secured territories, its leaders made it clear they would not allow themselves to be pushed aside again. Earth would carve out its own future among the stars, and those who stood in their way would learn that humanity had not just survived, they had come back stronger than ever. The story of Earth's greatest armada was far from over. The journey had only just begun, and the challenges ahead would be immense. But Earth's people had proven one undeniable truth. No matter how great the odds, no matter how bleak the situation, humanity would always rise again. And the galaxy would never forget the day Earth's greatest fleet returned to the stars. The universe was changing. Earth's return to the stars had not only shaken the foundations of the galaxy, it had ignited a flame of hope across every corner of the galaxy. Those who had once believed Earth to be a forgotten, extinct world now found themselves forced to reckon with the undeniable truth. Humanity was alive, and it had come back with a purpose. But with hope came tension. The surviving civilizations, many of whom had once regarded Earth as little more than a shadow in the void, were faced with a new reality. Earth was no longer a planet of survivors cowering in the dark corners of space. It was a world of rebuilding, of renewal, and of ambition. And that ambition would not be silenced. Earth's newfound strength had become both a beacon and a threat. For the first time in generations, humanity could take its place in the galaxy, not as a forgotten relic, but as a proud and powerful force. Yet this victory was fragile, and the galaxy's existing powers were wary. Earth's enemies, those who had thought they had wiped out humanity with their overwhelming force, were licking their wounds, and they had not forgotten the destruction they had caused. Beneath their wounded pride, the old empires, corporations, and factions began to prepare, watching Earth's every move. It wasn't just military power that would determine Earth's future. It was diplomacy, cunning, and the careful balancing of allegiances. Every move Earth made would send ripples across the galaxy, and mistakes could spell disaster. The people of Earth, once broken and scattered, now looked up to their leaders with both reverence and skepticism. They had lived in the shadows for so long, hidden away from the rest of the universe. Some of them, those who had fought with Earth's fleet in the final battle, understood the enormity of what had just begun. But there were many more who had lived their lives quietly, in hiding, unsure of what their future would hold in this new galaxy. There were no guarantees. The battle was won, but the war for Earth's place among the stars had only just started. These survivors were learning, growing, and understanding that the true fight for Earth's survival would take more than just military might. It would take diplomacy, wisdom, and perhaps most difficult of all, unity. As Earth's leadership gathered to forge the future, they began to understand the delicate nature of the situation. While their fleet was powerful, Earth's greatest strength would lie in its ability to form alliances and prove its value in the greater galactic community. The galaxy's powers would not tolerate a new player unless it had something to offer. And Earth had plenty to offer: technology, resource-rich lands, and the unyielding spirit of humanity. But could they build trust with those who had long seen Earth as a faded memory? Could they bridge the gap between a broken past and a promising future? Earth's leaders knew they would have to navigate these complex relationships carefully. The galaxy was vast, and Earth's place within it was far from guaranteed. The Armada, too, would need to evolve. It was a force of incredible might, but the galaxy was a vast and complex place. Earth would need to learn how to fight not just for survival, but for recognition, for respect, and for alliances that would ensure their place in the stars. No longer could humanity rely solely on its military. The universe was full of powers far older and wiser than Earth, and it would take more than brute force to secure peace. With the dust of the battle still hanging in the air, the Armada began its next mission, not of war, but of diplomacy, exploration, and proving that humanity was ready to be part of something greater. The survivors, those who had lived through the hardest of times, watched as the new Earth began to rise from the ashes. They worked tirelessly to rebuild what was lost, forging a new society that would be stronger and more resilient than before. Old wounds from the war remained, but the scars were not just of pain. They were marks of resilience, symbols of how far humanity had come. The cities were not only being rebuilt, they were being transformed. New technologies, old Earth wisdom, and the lessons learned from survival all melded together to create something that was more than just a recovery. It was a reinvention. But even as Earth looked forward, the past remained a shadow. The memories of the war, the loss, the destruction, were still fresh in the minds of those who had lived through it. The scars of the battle for survival were not just physical. They ran deep within the hearts of the survivors. And as Earth began to reach out, hoping to find its place in a galaxy full of uncertainty, these memories would guide them. They would never forget the cost of their survival, and they would not let the galaxy forget that humanity had been here before, and it had come back to claim its future. The story of Earth's rebirth was still unfolding. Its Armada had proven that humanity could rise from the ashes, but now Earth faced its greatest test. Could it rise and stand on its own, or would the weight of its past prove too heavy to bear? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain. Earth was no longer a planet of lost hope. It was a world of possibilities, of ambition, and of a future that humanity would shape with its own hands. The galaxy would never be the same again.